When we think of Christmas, we think of cozy fireplaces, family gatherings, and holiday cheer. But beneath the tinsel and twinkling lights, some strange and unexplained events have unfolded during this otherwise festive time. From eerie disappearance and ghostly visitations to bizarre crimes and unexplainable phenomena, Christmas has a knack for harboring its own share of mysteries. So grab a mug of hot cocoa, dim the lights, and let's unwrap the extremely strange side of Christmas. The Bell Witch haunting, one of the most famous cases in American supernatural folklore, involves the Bell family of Adams, Tennessee, and a malevolent spirit or entity that terrorized them from 1817 to 1821. The Christmas Eve trick, in particular, has become one of the more chilling tales tied to the legend, highlighting the Bell Witch's capacity for mocking, tormenting, and unnerving the family during what should have been a joyous holiday. The Bell Witch haunting began when John Bell, the family patriarch, encountered a strange animal on his farm, described as having the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit. After this sighting, unexplained phenomena plagued the Bell household, including knocking on walls, phantom voices, and physical attacks. The entity claimed to be Kate, a spirit supposedly tied to a local land dispute or some historical grudge. Kate became increasingly cruel, for the most part targeting John Bell and his daughter Betsy. In December 1819, the Bell family was already living in fear of the entity's unpredictable antics. They hoped for a reprieve during the Christmas season, gathering together in their home to celebrate. However, Kate seemed determined to disrupt their attempts at normalcy. As the Bells tried to read from the Bible and sing hymns, the spirit began to mimic their voices, singing hymns in a distorted, eerie tone. The laughter of the entity echoed throughout the house, mocking their attempts to create a spiritual atmosphere. Small wrap packages that had been placed under the Christmas tree were found inexplicably moved or opened. In some versions of the story, Kate replaced them with strange items, such as stones or twigs, as though to mock the idea of gift giving. Furniture began to shake violently as the family sat for their Christmas meal. Plates, cups, and utensils slid across the table or were thrown to the floor. At one point, a heavy chair was reportedly lifted off the ground and smashed against the wall without anyone touching it. The entity directed its cruelty toward Betsy Bell, who was slapped and pinched repeatedly, leaving visible marks on her skin. John Bell, who was frequently targeted by the spirit, claimed to feel an invisible force grabbing his throat, choking him momentarily. The family was left shaken and defeated by the entity's behavior on what should have been a day of peace and celebration. The event cemented the Bell Witch's reputation not just as a malicious force, but as one that seemed to revel in mocking human joy and traditions. Paranormal theorists suggest that emotionally charged occasions like Christmas could amplify paranormal activity, giving the entity more fuel to manifest physically. The Christmas Eve trick is often viewed as part of the Bell Witch's larger goal of asserting dominance over the family, breaking their spirits, and preventing them from finding moments of happiness. The Bell Witch's antics during Christmas became a recurring story among locals and added to the chilling lore of the haunting. The case remains one of the most famous hauntings in American history, often cited in books, documentaries, and folklore studies. The Enfield poltergeist case, one of the most famous paranormal incidents in modern history, saw an intensification of activity during the 1977 Christmas season. This period of heightened disturbances added to the intrigue and terror experienced by the Hodgson family. The case revolved around Peggy Hodgson, a single mother, and her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy. The family lived in a modest council house in Enfield, North London. In August 1977, the family started experiencing strange phenomena. Furniture moved on its own, knocking sounds echoed throughout the house, and objects flew across rooms. Janet, 11 years old, seemed to be the focal point of the activity. By December of 1977, the paranormal activity had become a full-blown media sensation, with investigators from the Society for Psychical Research, journalists, and even skeptics visiting the Hodgson home. However, as Christmas approached, the disturbances reached new levels of intensity. The poltergeist appeared to mimic Christmas traditions in its own malevolent way. It reportedly threw objects around the house as though giving presents, including ornaments, small toys, and other household items. Christmas cards pinned to the walls were found scattered across the floor or in different rooms without explanation. Janet continued to exhibit strange vocalizations, believed to be the voice of the entity. The voice, which identified itself as Bill Wilkins, became louder and more disturbing during the holiday season. Witnesses heard chilling statements from the voice, including mentions of death and its own past life. Bill claimed he had died in the house, reinforcing the idea of a haunting. Janet was reportedly thrown from her bed multiple times during the nights leading up to Christmas. The activity was so violent that her siblings sometimes fled the room in fear. During Christmas Eve, Peggy Hodgson reported hearing loud crashes and bangs coming from the living room, only to find the furniture had been rearranged or overturned. Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair, investigators from the SPR, were present during much of the Christmas period. They documented unexplained events, such as levitations of Janet and objects moving without physical interaction. During this period, a now famous photo was taken, showing Janet seemingly levitating midair above her bed. Critics argue it looks like she's jumping, but proponents claim the image captures genuine paranormal activity. Some paranormal investigators believe that holidays like Christmas, with heightened emotions and family gatherings, create a surge of psychic energy that can fuel poltergeist activity. Skeptics of the case suggested that the family, overwhelmed by attention and stress, might have subconsciously or consciously contributed to the events.
Well, perhaps you've got something to say to them.
Yeah. I'd like to know how you make this noise without bashing Janet's vocal cords to pieces. If I do it for half a minute, I get a sore throat. Goose chases here.
Others believe the entity was intentionally mocking the idea of Christmas joy. The Christmas episodes of the Enfield poltergeist illustrate how the festive seasons can, in some cases, exacerbate paranormal phenomena, adding an unsettling contrast to the holiday's typical warmth and cheer. On December 24, 1945, the Sodder family, parents George and Jenny and 9 of their 10 children, celebrated Christmas Eve in their home of Fayetteville, West Virginia. At around 1 a.m., a fire broke out. George, Jenny, and 4 of their children managed to escape, but 5 children, Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, were reportedly trapped inside. Earlier that day, a man claiming to sell insurance visited the Sodder home. After George refused to buy a policy, the man allegedly became angry and warned that their house would go up in smoke, citing George's criticism of Italian dictator Benito Mussolini as a potential motive. On Christmas Eve, Jenny answered a strange phone call around midnight from a woman asking for someone who didn't live there. She returned to bed, and the fire started shortly thereafter. The fire consumed the Sodder home quickly. George tried to rescue the children by breaking a window and re-entering the house, but was forced back by intense heat and smoke. His attempts to use a ladder to reach the upper floor were thwarted. The family's ladder was mysteriously missing. George also tried to use his 2 trucks to drive up to the house and climb into the upper windows, but neither truck would start, despite being in good condition earlier that day. The family was left to watch helplessly as the house burned to the ground. When the fire subsided, investigators declared the children had perished in the blaze, but no human remains were ever found in the rubble. The Sodders began to suspect foul play. Experts later pointed out that even if the fire had burned intensely, some bone fragments should have remained, yet none were found. Household appliances were recovered in the debris, showing that not everything was incinerated. Over the years, multiple people claim to have seen children matching the Sodders' descriptions in different states, including one report of 4 children seen with Italian-speaking adults. The Sodders believed their children had been kidnapped, potentially as retaliation for George's political views, given his outspoken criticism of Mussolini and fascist Italy. Some speculate that George may have angered the local mafia or other criminal groups, leading to the children being taken. The theory of the children being sold into slavery or adoption in another country has also been considered. In their quest for answers, the Sodder family erected a large billboard near their home in 1952, featuring photos of the missing children and offering a reward for information. The billboard became a local landmark and a haunting reminder of the unresolved mystery. In 1967, Jenny Sodder received a photograph of a young man resembling her missing son Louis, now grown. The photo, postmarked from Kentucky with no return address, bore a cryptic note: "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie." The family hired a private investigator to follow the lead, but the investigator vanished, leaving no report. The Sodder case remains unsolved. The surviving children and their descendants continued to investigate and share the story. Over time, the mystery of the missing children has inspired books, documentaries, and countless theories. It's a haunting tale that combines tragedy with intrigue, ensuring that the Sodder children's disappearance remains one of the most puzzling Christmas mysteries of all time. The Christmas truce of 1914 is one of the most remarkable moments in modern warfare, a spontaneous ceasefire during World War I. It unfolded primarily on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, when soldiers from opposing sides, British, French, and German, emerged from their trenches to exchange greetings, carols, and small gifts in the spirit of the season. While the truce itself is well documented, legends of ghostly encounters surrounding it add a mysterious dimension to the story. In the aftermath of the truce, some soldiers claim to have experienced or witnessed phenomena they could not explain. Soldiers from both sides reported seeing dark, human-like forms moving silently across no man's land late at night after the truce. These figures would appear briefly before fading into the mist or vanishing completely. Some veterans claimed to hear whispers or faint voices that seemed to come from the void of the battlefield. These sounds were often attributed to the spirits of fallen soldiers who might have been watching over their comrades. A few soldiers recounted feeling invisible hands on their shoulders or the sensation of being nudged awake during the night, only to find no one there. Survivors sometimes described fellow soldiers who joined the truce celebrations, but later vanished or couldn't be identified. There are claims that in group photos taken during or after the truce, mysterious faces appeared, faces that didn't match any of the soldiers present at the time. After the war resumed and the truce became a distant memory, the Western Front was said to remain haunted by the spirits of soldiers who had shared that fleeting moment of peace. Reports from 1915 describe soldiers hearing faint singing at night, resembling the carols sung during the truce. In some cases, they even saw a spectral figure holding what looked like a lantern and disappearing into the fog. Veterans of the truce often had vivid dreams in which they saw comrades from both sides, smiling and talking peacefully in no man's land. Some attributed these to lingering guilt or grief, but others believed they were truly visited by the dead. Even today, some visitors to the former battlefields of the Western Front have reported strange occurrences during Christmas time. Tourists and historians claim to feel sudden chills or hear an uncanny silence while walking the area where the truce occurred. Several accounts describe hearing faint strains of Silent Night or Still Notched, seemingly coming from nowhere. The Christmas truce remains a powerful story of humanity amidst horror, and the tales of ghostly phenomena add a layer of mysticism, suggesting that the peace and camaraderie of that night linger in ways beyond explanation. The specific Christmas haunting at Waverly Hills is tied to the idea that the spirits of those who died during the holidays, especially those who passed away during the harsh winters of the early 20th century, have not moved on. Many of these spirits are believed to be trapped in the building where they died alone and in pain. Visitors to Waverly Hills during Christmas have reported seeing shadowy figures walking the halls. These figures are often described as appearing in the same areas where patients were housed, especially on the upper floors where the most deaths occurred. Some people have also claimed to see the apparition of a woman in a nurse's uniform, believed to be one of the caregivers who passed away while working at the sanatorium. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the sound of children's laughter and footsteps echoing through the halls. There are multiple accounts of visitors hearing the sounds of voices calling out or even the distant sounds of a Christmas party, complete with laughter and music, as though the hospital were still alive with activity. These sounds often seem to come from the area known as the body chute, a long tunnel where deceased patients were secretly removed from the building to avoid upsetting the other patients. A drastic drop in temperature is a well-known phenomenon in many haunted locations, and Waverly Hills is no exception. Investigators and visitors have reported cold spots, especially in areas where many deaths occurred. The temperature sometimes drops suddenly in a single room, which is especially eerie during the cold winter months when the building is already prone to temperature fluctuations. Waverly Hills is also haunted by the spirits of children who died from tuberculosis. Many have reported seeing figures of kids in old-fashioned clothing, especially around the holidays. Some visitors have even claimed to hear the sound of children playing or giggling in empty rooms. This is particularly disturbing because many of these children would have died in isolation, unable to celebrate Christmas with their families. One of the more peculiar stories is about a visitor who claimed to hear bells ringing from a part of the building that had long been abandoned. The bells were reportedly heard on Christmas Eve and appeared to come from an area that had been closed off for years. No one was found in the area, and the source of the sound was never identified. Today, Waverly Hills Sanatorium is open for tours, with the most popular ones occurring around Halloween and Christmas. The holiday season is seen as an especially eerie time to visit, as the combination of the facility's dark history and the idea of lost souls remaining there lends itself to a chilling atmosphere. Paranormal investigations are frequently conducted at the site, and some of the most compelling evidence of ghostly activity has been captured during these times, especially around Christmas. So, as you can see, Christmas seems to bring more than just festive cheer. It reminds us that the world is full of mysteries, even at its most magical times. Perhaps it's the long, cold nights or the heightened emotions of the season that stir the strange and unexplained. Whatever the reason, this proves that Christmas isn't just about traditions and gifts. It's also a time to reflect on the unknown. So, from all of us here to all of you, have a very merry and possibly extremely strange Christmas.